It's the night of Monday, November 7th, 2016, and although polls have not yet opened anywhere in the United States at this point, we already know that millennials got crushed in this election. Their hopes, dreams, and plans as far as the political scene goes were destroyed in June of this year when Hillary Clinton secured the Democratic nomination. So one thing we can be sure of now is that at least at the federal level, problems that the U.S. faces as a nation are not going to get fixed by political means. So what happens now to the millennial generation, these progressives who were so active in attempting to bring about real change in the country, and now it's not going to happen? What do they have in their futures? Well, there are some mega trends that affect millennials. They affect actually a lot more than millennials, but millennials are going to be affected more than most people are. And that's that for many years now, decades actually, traditional employment has been slowly fading away. It used to be, many years ago, that you would grow up and get into the workforce or finish your education, whatever you're going to do, and you would go to work for some company and you would stay there and you would make a decent living for many, many years and possibly retire there. It hasn't been that way for a long, long time. In fact, it may never be that way again in the United States of America. And I think a lot of people have accepted the fact that you're not going to go to work for some company for 30 or 40 years anymore. As a matter of fact, there is a conventional wisdom that suggests that changing jobs every 4 years is about the optimum, that job changes are expected now, that you're not going to be with the same organization for multiple years. And actually, I have an opinion about people who spend their entire lives and never do anything except one type of job or one type of occupation. I would say that some of those people are the most narrow-minded, dumb people that I've ever seen in my life. That if you want to be a well-rounded, broad-minded, well-educated person, you don't need to work in one career or one job for your entire life, because the people that I've known who have done that have been, as I said, some of the dumbest people I've ever met. And so people have begun, in some ways, to accept that they're going to be with different companies throughout their working life, or maybe 2 or 3 different occupations, but actually it's accelerating to be more than that. This idea that you go to work for some company and then you have a stable job with full benefits for a long period of time, and that you make a decent living with that company. You may not start out making a decent living, but ultimately you do make a decent living with them, and you just kind of settle in there for a while. That is pretty much gone. And it's been going away for a long, long time, and a lot of people don't seem to understand that. Traditional employment, the making a decent living with a single company, the full benefits, and all the things that go along with that, that whole model has been in a slow, insidious decline for a very long time, as American companies take the view that you have the disposable American, that people are in fact disposable and easily gotten rid of. And they are easily gotten rid of in the United States. The United States has less worker protection than any country in the developed world. But if you're a young person these days, and your late teens or your early 20s, your chances of getting that good job and going to work for that good company and staying there for a long time, those chances are not very good, because that whole way of making a living is fading, and it has been for a very long time now. And you know, a lot of people don't know this, because there is still enough of that traditional model around that people think they're going to get into stable jobs and start families and all those kinds of things the way parents and grandparents did. And actually they're not. They're not with any kind of financial stability going to be able to do that, but they believe that they are, because there's enough of it still around. Traditional employment hasn't gone away in a big explosion. It's gone away slowly, gradually, insidiously over decades of time. And a lot of times the older generation, parents and grandparents of millennials, don't understand the changes that have happened in the national level economy. because things were always a certain way during their working life, and they worked somewhere 30 or 40 years and retired, and it's their belief that it's always been that way and it always will be that way. And actually, it's not that way. Many people, both without college education and with college education, never are going to find that traditional, stable job because the whole model is slowly dying. And so you have to get used to a future with many more job changes than people used to have, and you also have to be a lot more mobile than people used to be, and you have to be, I'm not going to say better educated in a formal sense, but you do have to have a lot more skills and know a lot more things than other people used to do, because a lot of companies now want the purple squirrel, that is, people who are ridiculously qualified, and they don't want to pay them very good wages. And this decline in traditional employment, y'all know what's happened to manufacturing, that most people can't go out and graduate high school and get a job in a factory and work there for years and years. That's been going away for a long time too. But there's also a crisis that's been developing with college educated people. Now you have this great big student loan crisis, and people are in debt up to their ears and they can't pay their loans because they had to borrow in order to get that college degree. They had to borrow because Pell Grants and personal funds and work funds and other things wouldn't cover it, so they had to borrow. But the jobs they get when they graduate aren't paying very well. Yes, it's true that college graduates are more likely to be employed, but college graduates in many fields don't make that good a money anymore, because pay and benefits have suffered a lot over the years. We've had this sort of shareholder value first, people last mentality in American business, and that's not going away anytime soon. There are a few eccentric millionaires and billionaires who own and manage companies who try to do it right, but there aren't that many. So sometimes you'll have a situation where a young man and a young woman have gotten married and they started a family. Maybe they're both college educated and they both got jobs, but neither one of those jobs is living up to expectations. Neither one of those jobs is paying a very good salary or a very good wage. And you find that if you stay with a company for any length of time, your earnings with that company stagnate, because the situation that has developed is a lot of companies truly don't appreciate what they have. And the only way for a lot of people to develop professionally and to earn more money financially is to leave one company and go to the other. You're not going to see your income and your security increase dramatically by staying with one company, especially not a bigger company with a human resources department. And don't even get me started on human resources. Look, from an employee point of view, human resources departments, those are not your friends. Those are your enemies. Human Resources Department exists to keep companies out of trouble and to make things easier for companies. Human Resources Department don't exist to benefit employees. They exist to benefit companies. And so this whole idea that you take problems to Human Resources Department, actually that's a good way to lose your job, because they're not on your side. They're on the company's side in an adversarial position to you. And everybody would do well to remember that. So college graduates are not earning what they expected to earn. The salaries and the benefits and the wages are just not getting up there. The factory jobs have been disappearing. So what are people to do in the future? Well, you've got to understand that job changes have become the norm. I still hear about people and know about people. A lot of times it's young people, sometimes it's older people, but they'll start a new job with a company, and the attitude is that they're going to settle in there for the long haul. They're not going anywhere. They're going to be there for a long time. Then a year or two later, that job is gone, and they never saw it coming because they don't understand the changes that have happened in the economy, where it's just that way now. Job changes and job losses are just that way now. And people are in fact viewed as disposable. So you have to get used to the idea of job changes, and you have to get used to the fact that if you want to advance yourself in any way, the way to advance yourself in the workplace is move to a different company. Because most companies are never going to give you what you're worth. You know, you got to go sell yourself to somebody else all over again. You have to keep selling yourself to successive jobs if you want to advance. That is just the way that it is. So job changes to achieve good income, to achieve higher status, those are absolutely necessary. You will have to be mobile. You will have to change jobs a lot. Another thing is the possibility that you may have to chase work all over the country. I don't see things getting really good for the United States anytime soon, but one fact always remains: some areas do better than other areas economically. They just do. And the South is never going to do well. You know, you hear things about Texas, and Texas is indifferent in some respects, and you hear some things about North Carolina maybe doing well and or better in some respects, but the circumstances that exist in those states actually has been oversold big time. It's usually oversold by companies who want minimal regulation and minimal taxes, and so they want people to believe that Texas and North Carolina and some other places are just the best places in the world, and they're not for employees. They might be for companies, but they're not necessarily for employees. And, you know, people find that they need to move to different areas of the country to find better opportunities, because some areas of the United States just aren't going to have any opportunities. You look at Alabama, you look at Mississippi, look at most parts of Georgia, much of Tennessee. You're looking at areas where there are just no opportunities. The kinds of work there that exist there, you know, it's very limited. And so long distance relocation, like people did when they moved west to find their fortunes, that's going to become more common. People are going to have to relocate more in order to be able to make any kind of decent living. And it may be that you'll never find traditional employment that pays you anything decent. It may well be that you'll never find anything like that. So what should you do? I think you should probably set your goal toward starting a business of some sort. I think it's going to be more important than ever before for people to develop skills and talents and abilities that they can use to start their own businesses. Because the stable job, the good job, the stable job, that whole paradigm is slowly going away. And people need to come up with ways to diversify their income. It's best to have more than one income stream if you possibly can. So if you're in a business that you could possibly learn something about and learn enough about it that you could maybe start your own, or you know, it's possible to advance in a small business if you know the people who actually control the thing, you know them pretty well and you get along. They may actually give you more responsibility and more pay. You'll be more likely to advance with a smaller operation than you would be with a bigger operation. So those are some things for millennials to keep in mind in the future. Traditional employment is slowly dying. That means changing jobs a lot. It means moving from company to company. It may mean moving from different geographical areas, and it may mean that traditional employment is completely closed to you and you simply have to find a business, or maybe a couple of businesses that you can run. I hate to say it, but that's the way it is. Things have been moving that way for a very long time. And so those are some of the challenges that millennials are going to face, and the sooner they learn those things, the better. Because hanging on to this old style notion of the job that lasts 20 or 30 years, that isn't going to work anymore. And it began to stop working decades ago, and things are getting worse in that regard. And here's one more thing. The college education may not be worth it, and the student loan crisis is proving that. There are people who borrowed an awful lot of money to get that bachelor's degree, and now they can't pay those loans back because the jobs aren't paying enough. So you might be better going with a non-traditional approach to learning what you need to know, as long as you're not in a highly regulated profession. That's something to think about. So, it's not pleasant, but those are the conditions faced by millennials, and I hope that most of them will have good luck in negotiating those perilous, changeable conditions that will affect the national and global economy for years to come. Thank you.